Pasha Paroh, Y7. Thank you for tuning. Yeah, I got the myth, the man, the legend, Chris. Please, welcome to Y7. Glad to have you here today.
Happy to be here. Good morning.
So, Chris, take a moment and introduce yourself for the people.
Sure. My name is Chris Pinadella. I'm a hospital and healthcare sales representative. I work for a pharmaceutical or a biotech company called BioFrontera. I work in photodynamic therapy currently, and I have been in the medical sales field for about 16 years and in sales overall for about 20. I grew up, born and raised in North Jersey, so that's pretty much it. I currently reside in Point Pleasant Beach, New Jersey, and absolutely love where I live. So that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. Thank you for that intro. You have we were talking the other day, and let's start small. Let's start small. So, in the United States, individuals aged 0 to 24 make up approximately 32% of the total population. Now, this is significant because that proportion indicates that youth are critical demographics for any population program aimed at long-term societal development. So my question for you in opening is, how do you see the principles of the good ancestor being applied in everyday life, particularly in contexts like youth organizations or community service groups, which may currently have their own established moral frameworks, such as the Boy Scouts?
Right. So I guess to start, I guess we should talk about what the actual good ancestor principle is and what it's about. The good ancestor principle states that we don't inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children, right? So essentially right now, the time we're living in, we're borrowing from our kids. The earth is ours currently, but it is going to be theirs. So it invites long-term thinking. What will future generations think about the decisions we make today? So it's incredibly important to, not just to constantly reflect on what societal norms and values are, but to reevaluate them, right? As we progress, as we learn new things, as we embrace science, as we embrace new discoveries about who we are and what we've accomplished and what we've learned. It's up to us to not be so stuck in what we truly believe necessarily and try to force the next generation to believe that. We should allow them to decide for themselves and to leave a future for them where they have the opportunity to decide for themselves what this world is. It's not up to us to dictate it to them. I think any one of us who grew up in a generation where it was dictated to us, we didn't like it too much. And everybody always says, "Oh, that's the way things are." But what if that's the way things didn't have to be? Might not be able to change it for us, but we can change it for our kids.
Exactly. So an alignment factor happens there. It sounds like between the good ancestor principle, and because I was a Boy Scout, I would have actually made Eagle. I had everything. I just didn't do the community service. Got to that age where other things became more important, didn't realize the value of Eagle Scout. So it sounds like the good ancestor principle and the Boy Scout morals show a strong overall alignment in their core values and the approach to ethical behavior, right? So both frameworks emphasize personal responsibility and ethical decision making. They encourage consideration for the broader impact of one's actions and on others and the environment. It promotes services to others and community engagement and advocate for continuous personal growth and character development. Are we seeing it the same there?
Yeah, 100%. The words that you want to put behind it. You could. This is why I struggle with lawyers. They try to debate the meaning of a word so often. I understand the importance of it, but I think more important than the word is the theme, and the theme of it is unity, shared responsibility, and a collective good. We need to stop thinking so individualistically about everything that we do. It's not to say that we shouldn't care about ourselves and be healthy and responsible and do our best to be our best selves. But at the same time, once we are our best selves, that what our responsibility is collectively to one another. And that's where I believe the alignment is of what we're both saying.
Awesome, awesome. So when architects, right? Because what we're seeing here is that the good ancestor principle and the Boy Scouts moral, they both are catalyzed, right? They both prove ethical decisions. They catalyze responsibility and growth and community engagement, right? So this alignment with what we'll call consumer values and societal needs is essential for achieving branding and marketing success in today's forum, whether it's business or society, correct?
It's going to be very, yeah, especially in this new economy, it's going to be quite interesting. Just the way that we are branding ourselves and that we do have such an influencer culture, and we are moving to what a lot of people have deemed the creator economy. So it's going to be quite interesting to see how authenticity and realism are shaping that. And I think we're seeing it live play out in real time. It's interesting, and I hope science studies and pays close attention to it, because it's a cultural phenomenon that's going to be studied for a very long time.
Awesome. So the architects and the grand designers and master builders often start building projects with a small model. So it's like the Boy Scout is being trained to focus on mastering today, right? Then we can scale focus to mastering one's lifetime, right? Which brings us to the main divergence between the two lies in their primary focus. The good ancestor principle prioritizes long-term intergenerational thinking, while the Boy Scout morals concentrate on immediate personal conduct and community involvement. Right?
Yeah, I would agree 100%. And I think it's important for both to exist. We need people who are responsible in the short term, focused on the here and the now. But we also need visionaries and leaders who are focused on the future. They're both equally necessary. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. And I think that's, one of the most popular terms is, role. What is your role? We are all built to have different roles. We need people who are concerned about the immediate and the short term 100%. We're working on solving all the problems of today. But at the same time, they should be very partnered and very aligned. One of my teachers calls it the Baldrige model of business or ethics, to just be cross-functional, cross-collaborative. And I see it all the time in organizations, in business. They're just not talking to one another. Everything's too siloed. And we needed that in the 20th century to advance certain sciences, but I think in the 21st, it's time to go back to a less siloed approach and start a more interdisciplinary approach to learning, as well as leading.
We have to get an approach that everybody understands. And oftentimes what helps people understand is knowing our history, where we came from, how we got here, so we can understand trajectory. So research estimated that between 1865 and 1910, what they would call or label Black residents acquired 15 million acres of land. And by 1969, the estimate total of Black-owned land fell to approximately 5.5 million. And by 2001, an estimated 80% of that land was lost. How can the good ancestor principle be applied to future planning for land and home ownership, particularly for up to 7 generations, in order to prevent the loss of property as seen historically, and in the light of Agenda 2030's prediction of owning nothing and still being happy?
That's an incredibly complex question. One that I'm not going to pretend to have all the answers to, but what I can tell you is where we should start, or where I think we should start. And that's in holding the politicians of today accountable for the crimes that they've committed in terms of gerrymandering and redrawing lines and people need to become familiar with where the term the other side of the tracks came from and what it is. A lot of what I've noticed in generations around me where I grew up, there's this whole I'm again, so I'm just going to say I'm from northern New Jersey, so right outside of New York City. There's a melting pot here, and a lot of what I hear in my everyday life is we don't understand it. I'm of Italian Irish descent. The Italian and Irish, they had it very hard. Why can't everybody just pull it up by their bootstraps? And um, I think it fails on so many levels to really pay attention to what institutionally was different for us. And really address what gerrymandering and redlining and all these things are. And that's step one. And then step two is going to, unfortunately, you have to take a whole lot of leaders to basically understand that, the future we're creating isn't for ourselves, and we might have to take it on the chin a little bit in order for our kids to have it better and not think so much about ourselves. And it's an unfortunate thing. I hope that I'm wrong on that. I truly do. But I think right now it's time to just course correct first and foremost.
Course correction, and that's what the good ancestor principles could help with. We're thinking from our current state with implementation. So something, I always point out to people who think they're doing well. Some of them live in their bubble of I'm doing great, and they got this plan. They're going to work their whole life to be in the attitude, which means position to leave behind a home and some fiat currency to the next generation, which is a generation, for those who may not know, is identified 20, 30 years as far as time goes, but the lineage that comes out thereafter, right? So they're in the mindset of I'm going to leave a home, some fiat currency, without preparing the next generation to be able to maintain through having a family business or support the family in some way greater than just having the paper dollar there. The average inheritance received by households in the United States is approximately $46,200 per some accounts, with significant disparities, of course, across racial groups. This relatively modest average inheritance value suggests that many families may struggle to maintain inherited properties, for example, potentially leading to sale or losses due to financial constraints. So in your eyes, Chris, tell us, how does the principle intersect with the success of American businesses?
The success of American businesses. Look, we used to have a model of American business that worked quite well, where people didn't want to job hop and go from place to place, and you wanted to build a company, and you were rewarded with a pension, and you did things a certain way, and that was based on, that's something that one of those principles I think we lost that was tremendously beneficial to the country, where you would hire the right people with common goals and common morality for a common purpose, because it's what you all truly wanted to do, what you truly wanted to work on. And then you almost became a family of choosing, and one that would support you throughout the rest of your life. And now we got lost, I believe, somewhere probably around the late 70s, early 80s. I mean, in terms of economic policy, I'm not a genius on that, but when we started going full Reagan model to trickle down economics, we lost a lot because we were so concerned with short-term returns rather than long-term success. And unless we ever get back to that, we're gonna just maintain a culture that is tremendously disadvantageous to many. And it doesn't. I know that many will argue that will lead to a lack of progress, but in fact it won't. Thomas Malone, who I learned from on an online course at MIT, one of the smartest professors I've ever listened to, spoke about the concept of a supermind, and that companies are all superminds, and that having diverse opinions and perspectives in these organizations actually propels them forward because of the difference, not despite of it. So I think that's something that all businesses can learn from, is to take care of their own, encourage them to speak up, and nurture your own ideas. And when you've got somebody who's passionate, listen to them.
I like that you spoke about the long-term vision. The listening part that you closed with there really ties into a lot of issues that's going on in toxic workplaces as well as in community, because people have become so accustomed to demonizing, as Simon Sinek would say, the ones that bring the warning ahead of time, the
Hmm.
opportunity for change, and they reward the people who stand up in the middle of the panic. So the good ancestor principle could actually enhance American business success through several key aspects. The long term vision encourages businesses to prioritize sustainable practices over immediate profits, right? Leading to reduced costs and increased efficiency, while actually positioning them as industry leaders.
Yeah.
It's going to it's going to give them enhanced brand loyalty by committing to ethical practices and community well-being to cultivate strong brand loyalty, from what I see. And I'll give
Hmm.
you a moment to confirm or deny these allegations. So, innovation and adaptability. The principle drives the innovation, prompting companies to invest in sustainable products and services, which helps them stay relevant and explore new market opportunities.
Hmm.
Community engagement. Businesses that engage positively with their communities build strong relationships and enhance their reputation, creating a supportive network. And lastly, being resilient against change. Here we go with the buzzword. The long term planning enables businesses to navigate economic fluctuations and societal changes more effectively. Take a moment and run through that for us. Let me know if you need me to repeat.
Yeah, let's just go through them one by one. So just start with the first one, and then let me just address step by step. That's just the way I usually work best. So the first principle.
The first principle was the long term vision. It encourages businesses to prioritize sustainable practices over immediate profits.
Yeah, I mean, just look at Amazon. If you want to take a look at a successful model that didn't prioritize profits but prioritized, I'm not saying what they're doing 100% with their people is right, so please don't mistake me there. But what I am saying is Amazon, at least in terms of sustainability, understood that profit wasn't necessarily what was going to drive the company forward. It was going to be the adoption. And what did Jeff Bezos famously say? You know, it was like 20 years or something before it was profitable. But why? Because he had a long-term vision, and he understood that in order to create something sustainable, you don't need to be profitable in year one. Um, it's not necessary for progress. Profit is not necessary for progress, um, but sustainability it is.
Right. So, and they make a good point there. Um, Profitability is not mandatory in year one. And a lot of people get discouraged when they don't see like huge results and successes right away, which they fall out, or like you said in earlier, they job hop because they only give it a year. But if they gave themselves 5 years in that position, or 5 years in starting a new business or brand, they could have became great, and it would have been a lot better than starting over 5 different times and being still year one 5 different times over a 5 year period. So the second one is enhance brand loyalty. By committing to ethical practices and community well-being, businesses can cultivate strong brand loyalty as consumers prefer to support responsible brands. And I think this is great from everything from, if you look at that dynamic, it's really the glue between not just businesses to consumers, but family relationships, community, what holds the community together, all the way up to a nation. Speak on that.
Yeah, so it's huge, right? I mean, to back up, I'm a big fan of geopolitics, right? So I'm a big fan of borrowing ideas from other things that I study. When you take a look regionally, just at the U.S., you realize that we're, very multicultural, very diverse. We have different resources in different parts of the country, right? We've got farm country, we've got mountainous terrains, we've got deserts, we've got it all. And we tried very often too hard to put a copy and paste method across the entire country. And and get furious at one another when we don't understand why principles in one place don't work in another. And it's really quite simple. It's just if you go there, and people will always shout at me, like, why do you say this about this? You've never been to that place. And so what did I do? I said, you know what, you're right. When I was younger, I used to think, but why didn't it just work everywhere else? And then you slowly but surely you learn and you adapt and you figure out why. And I think what's the most important thing that people can do in this country is to, when presented with new information, hear it, accept it, pivot, and go, all right, well, now that I have this, how can I adjust my thinking going forward? And that to address what's happening regionally, what we can do to change, what we can do to sustain long term. Just adapt that mindset. Very simple, easy scientific principle. And then, when challenged, when somebody comes at you, and rather than getting angry and defensive, open up a dialogue, ask a clarifying question. Hey, is this in fact what you're asking me? Okay. And then mirror what they said and understand exactly, this is sales 101, guys, sales 101. Mirror what they say, acknowledge what they say, and then don't be afraid to gently push back on it. Hey, well, here's why I differ. If you saw it from my perspective, would you understand why this is different? And have a dialogue. We need to get away from meme culture in this country. Stop. If you're proving your point with a meme, I'm sorry, but you haven't experienced creative thought. Sure, you may enjoy your sick burn of the moment, whatever you want to call it, and laugh or whatever. But if you're proving your point with a meme, all you're proving to me is that you haven't studied a moment in your life.
Yeah. A lot of people are emotional and they don't use their words. And that's why, I get a lot of pushback because I'm based on etymology, because we need to know what the words really mean. But that's a whole nother discussion, not to go too far into that right now. Let's move on to innovation and adaptability. So this principle drives innovation, prompting companies to invest in sustainable products and services, which helps them stay relevant and explore new market opportunities. And this is critical because from branding and marketing perspective, most companies, as I see it, are obsolete in how they're approaching this, because they don't realize that 60% of the current consumer market is millennials like myself and younger, which means that from my point down, as far as age, we're more and more, we don't care what your product is, it's what does your brand stand for, which is why corporate activism is becoming such a huge thing. Right. And let's talk about that for a moment. So innovation and adaptability, as far as the good ancestor principles in business, the principle drives innovation, prompting companies to invest in sustainable products and services, which helps them stay relevant and explore new market opportunities. How do you see that help?
Well, I think if more corporations paid attention to the fact that a lot of their consumers don't like what they're doing, and that they are actively searching for alternatives. Perfect example right now, I talk to a guy by the name of Keith Keller all day, every day, about what he calls the blue ocean principle. And that is just completely untapped markets that are popping up everywhere and that are existing, like blue sky is a perfect example. The new answer to Twitter, because people just want to get away from what Twitter was. So yeah, everybody's enamored with Elon Musk and all this stuff that he's doing, but take a look at how many people are running from it and how desperately they're trying to cling and get away from it. They think they're leading in some sort of way with magic and innovation and toys, but what they're really doing is, they're sure the shiny object is fun and cool, but what they're doing is they're alienating a population that is not even ready for the conversation yet. So maybe try to have the conversation with the people you're selling it to before you try and sell it.
Great point. Know your market, know your audience, or know at least the destination. Another quote from Simon Sinek is—
understand the implications. I'm sorry to interrupt, but understand the implications, right? When we introduced social media to the world, we did not have enough conversations about the implications, and we're introducing artificial intelligence, and that's a big conversation that needs to happen, but I won't get too far ahead.
Nah, that's great. I like it, because what I was going to say was Simon Sinek's quote was, Once we agree on a destination, it makes it easier to overcome all obstacles. And
Mhm.
see, I'm glad that you brought up the AI factor because everybody's buzzing about it now. But that's because they never researched to know what normative social influence was in its implementation for the last several decades. Normative social influence to me was the first artificial intelligence. It was the forced compliance due to the desire to be acceptance, which made people assimilate. So that was the first artificial intelligence, and people are like now talking about AI as if they missed that, which I think a lot of them did. Which brings us to community engagement. Businesses that engage positively with their communities build strong relationships and enhance their reputation, creating a supportive network that benefits both the business and society. So how does the good ancestor principles assist there?
I mean, I think it's just a common theme. You have to just take a look at it, and it's just, I look at the. Let me just break it down and go back to the very beginning. The good ancestor principle is essentially just a decision-making model for life that can apply everywhere. It could apply in business. It could apply in your personal life. It could apply pretty much anywhere you want to go. If you just take a look at the world, at the things that you want, the things that collectively as a whole that we want, and we just understand that we can't do everything that we want individually, right? That's the first thing that we need to realize, is that our universe, we could do our best we can to craft what we want, but we have to do it with the intention, the determined intention of understanding that we are affecting others, and that the universe doesn't rotate around us. So that's principle number one. So now that you understand that you are not the only person on the planet, and that you exist with several trillion, not just other people, billion, but other trillions of other animals and organisms and everything else that exists on this planet, you have a shared responsibility with them as well. Because that's just what the food chain dictates. The universe just operates by natural laws, everyone. And the universe operates on balance. The more we unbalance it, no matter what, and let's just use a pop culture reference. Everyone has seen The Matrix. Neo is just the counterpoint to Agent Smith, and that principle is real in real life. Right now we're in a tumultuous situation for a variety of reasons, both geopolitically, culturally, and it's because we're just not having these good ancestor conversations where we're just engaging in dialogue, one-on-one, like you and I are doing right now, trying to understand one another. We might not agree on everything, but I can tell you what, no matter what, we're going to come out of this with a healthy respect for one another. And you're probably not going to get in my way ever. And I'm not going to get in your way, because I'm going to understand what you're about. We're going to go, oh, I like what he's doing here. I might not like that, but I can use some of what I learned from him right here, and move forward and become a better person. And that's it. I'm learning in this conversation right now while everybody's watching. Some of the things you brought up, there were concepts I wasn't familiar with that I'm going to research. Right? I'll be 100% transparent. This is how we learn. Dialogue.
This is how we do it.
Yeah.
It was Friday night, right?
Mhm.
So that's the point of conversation. A lot of times, no matter how extremely different people may appear to be, when you conversate, you may find out you're a lot more similar than what you first thought of, right? And that's going to bring us into the resilient factors against the challenges. Long-term planning enables businesses to navigate economic fluctuations and societal changes more effectively, right?
Mhm.
And part of that is understanding who each other are and where they want to get to, because then it shows us from a greenbelt standpoint perspective, like myself, that's how we can confirm ROI justifications based on what each individual stakeholder wants and where their XY intercepts lie, right? So I'll give you this in its entirety, repose. Long-term planning enables businesses to navigate economic fluctuations and societal changes more effectively, making them more resilient to risks associated with environmental, social, and economic uncertainties. You may have talked on it, but go ahead and give them the full run through on how the good ancestor principle supports that in business. and community?
I mean, the way it's going to support it in business and community is just kind of just a retying together the entire conversation we've just had, right? If you're going to hire the right people, if you interview the right people and you find out what their core values are and what they believe in, then it's nearly impossible to fail, because all you have to do at that point is have open and engaging dialogue with the people within your organization and understand that anytime there is any sort of conflict, it is not conflict based off of a non-common goal. It is conflict based off of a different way of how to approach the same goal. And then that's where the most important conversations within your organization are going to take place. Because there's two people who are clearly seeing different obstacles down the line. And those, if they're both seeing obstacles, right, that means that they're both working together to try to, they think that their way is the best. And then it's up to a leader of an organization to digest all of that and implement it and understand how to advance forward. And then take those, let everybody know that, hey, your voices were all heard. We agree with this, this, and that, but this is the direction we're going. So let's lead that way. And then just because you've chosen that direction, reassess quarterly. Make sure you're doing what you're doing is working. And then if it's not, maybe revisit what the other person or the other group of people had to say. I'm not saying, constantly change. I'm saying constantly reevaluate and plan. And that's how you can be sustainable as an organization very long term, is if you're constantly listening to your people, you understand that they have a tremendous amount of value, that there's a reason you brought them in, and that they're there because they want to be there, because they have a vision too. And so you should continue to teach them and elevate them. And, when the promotions and the opportunities come, give them a plan, have a roadmap, let these people know. And if you can't give them a promotion within your organization, give them a recommendation to another organization that you work in, and hopefully they learn some skills there and they can come back to you. It's all about breeding an ecosystem. It's not, you're not going to work together with somebody the whole time, necessarily always. But if you don't burn bridges and you don't remain too overly competitive, but rather support one another, you never know who's going to come and go and where your paths might cross again. And that's it. As long as you know that that's somebody you can trust and do business with, who knows, if they land somewhere else, that might be the best thing that could happen for you anyway, because they might help you do business down the line. So that's just the way to grow. Just be good to people.
All time affects all time, all the time. And the experience you may have at a place that you're not meant to be forever may be part of that growth and development that makes you the expert and shine in another role, in another position. So in the context of long-term sustainability and the well-being of future generations, how does the good ancestor principle emphasize the role, as you were speaking on it lightly, of education and skill development, but in the context of coping with technological advancements projected, because we are talking about 7 generations over the next 150 to 200 years?
Yeah, so I think this is immediately going to bring me right back to the artificial intelligence conversation. And I think what we need to do is understand that from an evolutionary biology standpoint, right? And this is why I'm all about interdisciplinary sciences. If you implement something like artificial intelligence at a very young age, sure, it's an amazing tool that can help facilitate learning, but it should not replace contextual learning. It should not replace the ability for children to learn completely human. It will kill creativity. If, a lot of people will say it will enhance. Sure, you could type in a prompt and something will pop out, and that will train the way the kids think for the rest of their lives. Is that really what we want? Is a question we should really be asking ourselves. In certain, I could probably make an argument that it will probably unlock certain savants that would have never been unlocked before. But what is that going to do for people who would have been organically creative? It's got its place. It's a tool. But I almost think we should look at it as something that should maybe be a licensed tool, right? Before you can use it, maybe demonstrate proof of concept, just like we used to do with calculators in math class, right? So before you use it to write your essay, prove that you know how to write an essay. I look at artificial intelligence as a template generator, not and something that is an extension of my own capabilities, not something. And I see it. I let my nephews play with it on occasion, and then I take it away very quickly once I notice what they start to do with it, because I know that it's instantly killing everything that's human about them. Not everything, but it is not. It is scary to see what's happened with social media and to think about something that much more powerful than social media manipulating their thought patterns for generations to come.
It's a great reference of fear that you brought up there, because most people don't realize that their involvement with social media is actually controlling what they call the real world in the streets, because they're being programmed by the rules and regulations of social media, what you can and can't say, social credit score system being implemented in plain sight now. It's been here for decades, but now it's being implemented there, and then they get so accustomed to that it's molding their minds, and they're going and acting like that in the real world. So Pasha Paroh, my natural person is Paroh Nakota Wooded, which is Great House Distinguished Restorer. So I'm fascinated with this topic because the great house could be your own heart, your mind, then your body. Then once you get that right, your household, you scale it up to city, state, and eventually the nation. So we need to scale our Boy Scout into good ancestors, collect a bunch of them to manage regions and stuff, right? Can the good ancestors principles be scaled to the national level?
Yeah, I mean, I think the founders had a great model for that, and I just think we've lost track of it, right? So, I mean, the federal government was meant to be something that was implemented for the overreach simply of when the morals of the states got out of control. And, they understood it was, at the time, multiple different little economies that were all just trying to escape imperialism and colonialism and all that. And some of the mistakes we made is that we held on to some of those imperialist, colonialist beliefs, and we kind of brought them and kept them with us a little bit too long. And it's time to reevaluate and understand that the Constitution is a living, breathing document, that we have amendments for a reason, and that it's time to start having those conversations again like the founders would have had. And the reason they made the document that way is because when we come to situations like this, where we start seeing things go wrong and we start seeing so many people that are struggling and so much mental health and profit that is prioritized over happiness and just so much wrong that is going on, the founders would have rolled over in their graves and gone, fix this. And I'm uniquely influenced. I grew up in a small town called Pequannock, New Jersey, so it's Native American. And it also is where Washington camped when he came here. So I see the principles of both, and they've kind of both molded me. And I think if we could learn to take Native American principles and marry them with founding doctrine, then we've got a real recipe for success.
I really appreciate your genuineness in answering. I'm providing the questions to steer us in a certain direction, and you're right in line with me. I appreciate that. So to do that, right, it takes funding in terms of building and billing for these services. One could explore innovative funding models that allow for investment in long-term projects. So this might include, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's take it in one at a time. So service design, right? If we were going to scale this up nationally, the department could adopt these principles to enhance service delivery by ensuring programs that are not only beneficial in the short term, but also sustainable and impactful in the long run, right? So this could involve creating policies that prioritize environmental sustainability, social equity, and economic viability. We also got the public engagement factor. Now, it's going to sound familiar. By involving citizens in the decision-making process, this so-called department could forge a sense of community and shared responsibility, right? It's going to align with the good ancestor philosophy, which encourages collective action for the benefit of future generations. education and awareness, the department could implement educational initiatives that promote good ancestor principles, helping citizens understand their role in shaping a sustainable future. And this could be integrated into civic education programs, enhancing public understanding of governance and civic responsibility.
Yeah.
Public and private partnerships, collaborating with private entities to fund initiatives that embody the good ancestor principles, thereby sharing the financial burden while enhancing service delivery. Two more: grants and funding, seeking grants aimed at sustainability and community development could provide additional resources to implement these principles effectively. And then the fee for service models, developing programs that charge fees for certain services with the proceeds reinvested into community projects that align with the good ancestor ethos, which sounds like what the US corporation, the government, was invented or invited to do for the American people, which you touched on earlier, and maybe failing to accomplish in its current state. What's your take on that?
My take on that is very simple. We have very greedy people in the world, and one of the largest criminals, I think, whatever, I'm going to say it. It's a criminal move by Chief Justice John Roberts in 2009 to cast the vote on Citizens United that gave corporations all the power of citizens by being able to take unlimited funds from anywhere in the world under a 501c3. Right, that's how we fund elections right now. The reason that nobody pays attention to any of the states, other than the 7 swing states, is because the 7 swing states are the only place where we have enough of a cultural mix where it matters, and there's enough independence where it matters, where we actually can go down. God, we're going to really go down a rabbit hole if I go into how social media affects this, so I'm going to not go there. But long and the short of it, Citizens United basically took away everything that made us American in terms of our voice and our power. It's just the short version. Keith Olbermann does a great piece on it. You can watch that YouTube video clip. Anybody who's watching, just Google Keith Olbermann Citizens United. And then you should start paying attention to that and find out why. It'll explain a lot as to why we're at where we're at right now, and why it's important to pay attention and to be well informed, and to maybe stop paying attention to the cable news organizations that are billionaires funding millionaires to tell you what's up. Maybe I think one of the most important things to touch on education, as you brought up, is to figure out how we can get accurate, real information again. I try Ground News. It's one of the better ones that I get. So you can actually make informed decisions.
I like that. Let's break for one moment from the course that I was on. We've had a lot of statements, but here's one question. And the question is from Henry Stevenson Perez, if I pronounced that correctly. What are the practical mechanics of our daily living that we need to master today to ensure that our solutions actually arrive in the living space of humans 200 years from now? In a form that is actually useful for them. So maybe to consolidate, at this point, we're at the 43-minute mark. People may have just joined. Give them a high-level overview that would answer that question, and then we'll continue.
The high-level overview is to investigate the Baldrige business model. I'm studying under Henry right now. Henry is brilliant. I haven't finished studying under Henry right now, so I don't want to get the principles wrong to the audience. That's how important I believe the principles are. But essentially, to start out, the one that it basically maps out your life in terms of 8 pillars, and it teaches you what is called 4-dimensional thinking. And when you're able to achieve 4-dimensional thinking, you are able to not only just plan for the short and the near term, as we were discussing earlier, the importance of, but you're also able to foresee the problems that are going to occur down the line, and approach it with foresight. Henry compares it to the game of NIM. NIM is a game of matches where you start out with 1, then it goes to 2 to 4. And essentially the concept of that game is that if you go first and let the computer make the next move, there's no chance you could win. And so if you understand the concepts in that game and you scale it up to the universe, you can understand that the universe actually behaves on principles. That when we measured the cosmic background radiation in, I believe it was 2013, we realized that the universe isn't pure entropy. It is, in fact, there's are massive pockets of anti-entropy. And what does that mean? What do those scientific implications mean? It means that the decisions we make in the real world are governed by a natural set of laws that are scientific and measurable. And so, if you, Henry, I'm sure will put everything in the comments. He always does. I invite you to read Henry's work. I'm studying it, and it's making me a better person. So I'm sure it could make the rest of you all better. If you take what Henry is putting out there, he's a scientist who's just offering it to the world for free, and we all study it together. I'm studying it right now, and I'm improving live in front of you all. So my message to you all would be to take what Henry's putting in the comments, and the reason he's asking that question is because he's trying to give you all an opportunity. He's given me one, and that's why I'm sitting in front of you guys. So listen to what Henry has to say. Give it a shot. Even if you reject it, at least you give it a shot.
Thank you for joining us, Henry, and I appreciate that valuable question for the humanity that's watching globally. Recent studies, as we are circling the buzzword of continuous improvement, both in business and in personal life. Recent studies, here's some stats, indicate that 40% of Americans believe the U.S. government has reduced wildlife and environmental protections. An additional 80% of respondents express dissatisfaction with the rollbacks of environmental regulations. Only 27% of Americans believe the government is effectively addressing climate change. Public trust in government institutions, we know, is crucial for effective governance. However, the Gallup poll revealed that only 20% of Americans trust the federal government to do what's right. The Gini index, which measures income inequality, was 0.481 in 2021, indicating a high level of income disparity. This inequality can limit access to resources and opportunities for many Americans. Education, lastly, plays a vital role in forging awareness of civic responsibilities, as we was talking about earlier. However, statistics show that only 25% of high school students are proficient in civics, according to the National Assessment of Educational Progress. This lack of proficiency suggests that many young Americans may not fully understand their roles in shaping a sustainable future, which is essential for implementing the good ancestor principles. So here's the question. With the low level of public trust in government institutions posing a significant barrier to effective governance, what strategies can be employed to rebuild trust and ensure that the good ancestor principles are perceived as genuine efforts rather than political rhetoric?
Well, first and foremost, this is, I think, at least in terms of information, in terms of news, in terms of what we're doing with social media, there should be a warning label slapped on that is no different than is on a cigarette box. When it's something is an editorial or an opinion and is presented as fact, right? So you have an entire generation of people that grew up trusting people like Walter Cronkite to deliver the news factually and unbiased. And now we have people on television like Jesse Waters and Tucker Carlson and Rachel Maddow. Like or agree with any of them is irrelevant to me. They're spouting opinion. I'll tell you my opinion all day long, but I'll tell you it's an opinion. And I think what they're doing on television and in print, it's incredibly irresponsible and ineffective. And that's why the public has lost trust, because we've become beholden to the advertisers, right? The clicks, who's generating it, who's paying for it. And so the advertisers, those of you in marketing and advertising, those of you trying to sell us everything, it's up to you to course correct that course of ethics 100%, because you're the ones who are destroying it for all of us by only being beholden to the dollar and saying that, hey, great, I don't care. I'm a finance bro, and so I don't really care as long as me and my buddies can have jet skis and yachts and all this stuff. We're gonna have fun. We don't really care what happens to the rest of the world until we start course correcting that and self reflection. Because all these people at the end of the day, when they live their luxurious, amazing lives, it's not really gonna matter when you're sitting there at the end of the day. It's did you have any real genuine connections? Who's there at the end? Who loves you? Who
Right.
cares about you? What are people going to think about you? And the most important thing that the good ancestor principle can teach anything is: do you really want to be eternal? Do you really want to be how to be remembered? Because the future is the history books are gonna dictate who you are, not us. We could talk whoever your contemporaries are. That doesn't matter. That's not how history is going to remember you, and it's important to remember that.
I like that. Speaking of history and being remembered, we're about a segment and a half. We're positioning to close here. So when you talk about the history, again, a lot of us are we finding that famous quote: "Those who don't know the history are doomed to repeat." So when you look at the fact of, I like that you brought up it's up to us, the people in marketing and branding, and that's why for those that know me and watch me over the years, I have the stance I have. You see my posts everywhere. You see the backlash it gets, but it's because we need a disruption. We need an interruption. We need a course correction. And since you brought up the history, it's a perfect segment to how we got here because the government, as we know it, is meant to provide services for the people. But let's look at the history. The key treaties like the Treaty of Fort Laramie, 1868, the treaty was significant as it established boundaries for the Sioux Nation and guaranteed their rights to the land in the Black Hills, but it was intended to ensure peace between the U.S. government and native tribes, allowing for U.S. expansion while recognizing the sovereignty of tribes involved. The Treaty of Greenville, 1795, following the defeat of Native American forces in the Battle of Fallen Timbers, this treaty was signed by various tribes, including the Miami, which credited large portions of land in present-day Ohio and surrounding states to the U.S. government. In return, the U.S. promised to provide certain protections and services to the tribes. The Treaty of Enchada, if I'm pronouncing that right, 1835, last treaty I'll mention. This treaty signed a small faction of the Cherokee Nation, led to the forced removal of Cherokee people from their ancestral lands in the Southeast and designated Indian Territory west of the Mississippi River. Although controversial and opposed by many, it was ratified by Congress and exemplified the U.S. government's approach to land acquisition and service provision. So these treaties often included provisions for the U.S. government to provide services such as education, sound familiar, healthcare, and protection from encroachment by settlers. However, the implementation of these agreements has frequently been problematic, with many treaties being violated or ignored by the U.S. government over time. This had led to our current state, the significant disputes and ongoing struggles for the Native American rights and recognition. So the contracts between the United States and Native American tribes, such as the treaties mentioned, were intended to facilitate U.S. presence and governance while providing services to the indigenous peoples. However, the historical context reveals a complex and often contentious relationship marked by broken promises and challenges in honoring these agreements. So, what I think is important to repose is that American was originally the copper-colored people found here by the Europeans when they arrived. Of course, later the title's given to everybody who was born here, which makes sense. If you're born here, you're American. So when you hear about the usage of Native American in the past comments I just made recently, know that that now applies to us all. Before I go into the build up for the final question, speak on that observation for me, will you?
Yeah, I think the observation is simple. You know, too many. to me, the way I hear you and the way I interpret that is, I've been asked my entire life, what nationality are you? And the question has never made sense to me, because everybody's always expecting me to say Irish, Italian, or whatever else. And that's just the way we've always identified here. I had a brilliant teacher when I was in high school. Her name was Linda Wagner. And, when I did a class project, I said, I don't like writing Italian American. She asked me why. And I said, well, because I'm American. I said, I was born here. I don't know anything about Italy. I don't know anything about Ireland. So she said, just write American then. And ever since then, I've just identified as one. And I think if you're here, if you're born here, or if you've moved here and you've adopted it, you're American. And that's it. The legacy of what American is a melting pot of shared ideas and collectivism. It's the world's greatest experiment. We cultivated the world's greatest artists and the world's greatest economy because we allowed it to exist. And right now, we're not allowing it to exist anymore. We're killing what made America great. So that's why I never really got behind the slogan, because we're destroying what made America great by embracing that other person. And so that's what I would say is we all care about the same things, and that's feeding our families and our children and doing what's best. And I have no problem with anybody who supported the man. I have a problem with how are we going to go forward, and how are we going to make sure that those who are at the top telling us that they really care about us with their billionaire agendas, how are we going to make sure that we hold them to those promises, and that if everybody's going to talk about the middle class and the lower class, how do we ensure that we're actually taken care of? Because once they're in power, they're no longer responsible. They that's it. They're in. We're a representative republic. We're not a democracy. They're in, guys. So now it's up to us to use the documentation, the powers, the systems, and the institutions that we have to hold. By the way, they work for us to hold our employees accountable. So let's hold our employees accountable, and let's make sure they take care of us.
I like that. I've been one who's caught a lot of heat for saying and proving how, despite the differences on the surface, being as though that we're all Americans, we have a group invested interest in making sure we align and get this right.
Yeah.
So the purpose of the preamble, right, establishes the foundational goals of the United States government, emphasizing the importance of serving the people and ensuring their welfare. So the treaties of the Native American tribes, which applies to Americans, native, right, today or back then, were intended to formalize the U.S. government's commitment to providing certain protections and services to our communities.
Right.
For example, the treaties, like we mentioned, the Treaty of Fort Laramie included provisions for peace and recognition of tribal sovereignty, which aligns with the goal of promoting general welfare. Mutual obligations were established in the treaties, can be seen as a form of contract where the U.S. government agreed to uphold certain quote unquote responsibilities, of course, in exchange for the land and peace. This reflects the preamble's intent to establish justice and ensure domestic tranquility. However, as mentioned, the historical context reveals that these obligations were and are often not honored, as we see today, leading to significant disputes and breakdowns of trust between U.S. government and, we could say, Native American tribes or us in general. Lastly, long-term impact was established in the preambles focused on securing the blessings of liberty for future generations, resonates with the ongoing struggles of Native American communities, i.e. us today, to reclaim and keep and maintain the rights and protect our heritage. The failure to uphold treaty obligations has had lasting effects on our communities, impacting our ability to thrive and maintain American cultural identity in support of what you just said there, Chris. So in summary, the treaties between the U.S. government and Native American tribes are directly connected to the principles outlined in the preamble of the Constitution. While these treaties were intended to provide services and protections, It's a lot of broken promises. So my final question for you is, in the light or in light of the historical context of treaties and ongoing challenges faced by Native American communities / our communities today, how do the good ancestor principles suggest that we as contemporary individuals should respond to government actions that seem to neglect the welfare of all citizens, given the complexity of our relationship with the government and the dissatisfaction expressed by many regarding its effectiveness? Do you believe that the issues we face today stem from a failure on the part of the American people to properly communicate our needs and expectations to the government caretakers established by our prior good ancestors? Or is it time to consider a fundamental change in our governmental structure?
I definitely don't think it's time to consider a change fundamentally in our governmental structure unless it's progressive to global, right? Because we are a global society. In terms of what we've got here, I think we've got the framework of something that can be adjusted. But I just think we need to revisit words and what they mean and how powerful they are, and what it means to honor your word, right? Because that's where this all goes back to one word that's really important: trust, right? If you can't trust your word, then it's going to lead to conflict, right? Because as soon as you can't trust something, as soon as you don't trust in something, then fundamentally you've already hit a massive flaw. So we need to rebuild trust. And the way you do that is simple: dialogue, make promises, keep them, and hold each other accountable, not through violence or through rhetoric or irresponsible how would I put it, outrage, but calm, cool, collected, decisive, rather than protest and burn and go to cities and destroy cities. Organize where you spend your money. Plan collectively. How do we avoid, this company or this person or this culture really hurt us? How do we make sure that they don't get any of our money, only the money that we need necessarily to get the goods and services we need to survive? Because guess what? People are still looking for profit. And that's the one thing that works in the system. When the profit dwindles, change occurs. So vote with your wallet and with your vote. It's not the only vote you get is not the one you cast in the booth. That's an important one. It's one to be incredibly educated on every time you go in there. That's a huge responsibility. I would challenge each and every one of you to understand how important it is. One of the things I don't like is when people just tell me I'm not going to vote. It doesn't matter. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. A lot of people fought and died for that right. Exercise it. Understand why it's important. Understand that millions and billions have struggled before you for the opportunity to cast that vote, what they would have given for that opportunity. So for you to simply sit there and go, to make the conscious choice that I don't want to learn simply because it's too difficult and I don't trust anyone, that's not a way forward. Work at it. Work at a better future. That's the only way to do it. The work is necessary.
With that being said, the work is necessary, Chris. I appreciate you for putting the work in, your team for showing up present and behind the scenes, also helping put the work in, the work it takes to spread this message that we're delivering today. And I want to end with the preamble. We the people, to remind them of the destination so we can overcome all obstacles. We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Chris, I want to give you a moment. I appreciate your participation. I steered this, but I want to make sure you have a moment to cover anything that you may want the people to know that I didn't give you an opportunity to.
Yeah, the only thing that I would want to say to everybody listening, I wouldn't be here if I simply wasn't my authentic self and looked around at what I saw in the world and went, this doesn't make any sense to me. Um, there are a lot of good people. Everybody I meet are good people on the whole, and we're all arguing and we're all fighting. And my biggest struggle in life has been trying to figure out why people don't see what I see. Um, and the thing that as I'm coming literally live in the moment, having had an argument with my family this morning, is that without proper context, without education, without understanding the what behind the why, without asking people the questions, why are you so against what I'm trying to do, or why are you so fervently angry at something? Understand it, because if you understand anger and frustration, that's the root to addressing it and getting past it. And don't feed into it. I've made that mistake plenty in my life. Don't feed into an argument by becoming the angry person as well. Try to keep your cool and understand what's going on. And in that moment, reflect and grow. And I'm not perfect. I'm getting better at it, but that's the only thing I could do is be authentic and human and tell you guys the truth. I'm not perfect. I'm going to still make mistakes, but I'm going to try to keep getting better. And I hope you all can just try the same thing that I'm doing. Just keep trying to get better. And the way I'm doing that right now is I'm learning what Henry's going to post in the comments. One of the other reasons I didn't talk about it is he told me that it's not something that you can learn by preaching. It's something you have to learn by trying. So I invite you all to try it. Do I know that I'm going to subscribe to it 1,000%? I don't know, but I'm liking it so far. So that's my ask to everybody.
Henry, be sure to share that in the comments for us. I think this was a fascinating discussion. I appreciate you and your trust in the outcome of this. And because you went into it blindly, everybody that's been following YNS7 know there is no prepping for this. It's all live. It's unrehearsed, and that's the genuine factor of it. So I want to close with this in mind for the people: is that if the government has abandoned you, the positive aspect is that we have small businesses that can grow and scale to replace every government service there is. So Chris may not have said it, but I've said, if we grow our businesses, we are actually in competition for market share with the United States government. Thus, if our businesses grow, the dollars that go to the United States government shrink, by default making a smaller government. We don't need to destroy the nation in protest. We need to invest in growing the replacements so that we can then boycott without need to return. And if we come together and organize, and we either give the United States government the opportunity to install correctly and perfect the good ancestor principles on what may be seen or thought of as the tax dollars of the American people to support it, or we grow our own businesses and replacement and establish our own sustainable communities. I'm Pasha Paroh, reducing codependency on big government and large corporations by empowering we the people to create sustainable communities. Chris, you want to give a closing to the people?
Yeah, thank you guys for all of your support. I got to say thank you first and foremost to Kenny, Henry, to Michelle, to everybody that's in all the audio rooms that's been supporting me. I really do appreciate everything you guys have done. I would not be here without you. I called many of them over the past 2 days to prepare myself for this, just so I could be as, I wanted to talk for them. I'm not here talking strictly for myself. Yes, a lot of what I'm saying is what I truly believe, but I wanted to make sure that it wasn't just my words. These are the words of an entire populace of people. I'm feeling the responsibility of that moment right now. So thank you all for trusting me to deliver your message. I hope I did you proud. And I'll continue to learn, and I'll continue to deliver as long as you'll have me delivering it. It's my honor, and thank you for having me, and thank you for bringing me in on this unfiltered way, so that the world could meet me in a way that is truly authentic to myself.
Absolutely. It's always the perfect day. Say bye to the people, Chris.
Have a great day, everybody, and feel free to DM me. I'm not shy.
If you missed it, you can go back to the beginning. His LinkedIn information is right there. And from there, you can find other contacts and sources. Be sure to hit Chris up. I'm Pasha Paroh. This is why Net 7, because the information you get here, why it'll help you net 7. So let's all net 7 so we can be strong and build that community together.